Hey, everybody, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So, today we're going to be having a show where we just talk about immigration, illegal immigration, mostly immigration to the West, Europe, and America. You know, talk about immigration from third world countries, especially from, say, Africa and the Middle East, and what the consequences of such immigration is or would be to the West. All right. So, before we begin, if you're joining us for the first time or if you're just joining the stream, kindly like, share, and subscribe to the channel, as that will help us to keep sharing these interesting conversations that we have, right? And also, don't forget to check out my crime fiction novel on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description of this video. It's quite an interesting read for those who've read it. So, yeah, you can support by doing that. Anyway, back to the conversation. Now, this conversation sort of came up, or this stream, the motivation for this stream came up from two questions that was asked on the Critical African Thinkers Discord channel, right? One of it was asked by Mark, right? Mark asked, what would be the result of increased migration, to the West, especially from other less developed parts of the world? And the second question he asked was, what would that be better for the world in the long run if you have more people emigrate to the West? Would it be a net positive for the world? Now, when I saw those questions, I actually gave him my very short version of the answers, right? But I'm not going to give a short version of the answers. I'm going to just give my thought process on what the answers to those questions would be. And I'm going to break these answers into certain sections, about 4 or 5 sections. The first one, I'm going to be talking about some of the issues that Europe and America currently face with their migrants, with the migrant crisis or the migrant issues, right? Some of those issues that will come up with, having more migrants from other parts of the world that may not necessarily share Western values, right? And we're beginning to see all those things. And then I'll address the other question of why do people even emigrate in the first place? Why do people leave their homes and then emigrate to the US, to Europe? What are they looking for? What's driving them? What are the compelling reasons for why they emigrate, right? Because it might not be so clear to some people why some persons will just leave their homes and decide to, go to another country, right? And then I will talk about the dangers of such migrations, and lastly, I'll talk about how this is, I'll talk about Western culpability in all this and how this is more akin to a situation of the chicken coming home to roost, right? So those are the sections I'm going to break the stream into, and after that, I can open it up for anyone who wants to call in. Now, let's have a conversation. Let's have a chat, right? So let's start with some of the problems that I think I've seen, some of the problems I think I've identified, right? Especially, I think for now the US is still safe, at least from all these whole migration issues, right? I think Europe is bearing the brunt of most of whatever is happening with migrants coming into Europe, right? And you see things like, oh, there's a tick in crimes being committed by migrants. There are places where police cannot even go into. I think in some places of the UK where it's almost as if the authorities have ceded those areas to criminal gangs, right? They are quote unquote Muslim grooming gangs, right? In certain parts of Europe, in Sweden, and I think in one of the other Nordic countries, you can't even you you can't burn the holy book of a certain religion, even though you can burn the Bible, right? You can't. Some refuse to assimilate. They refuse to assimilate into European culture, keeping certain aspects of their culture that may not be so compatible with Western values and all that. So these are some, and then there have been times where there are protests where you see immigrants protesting, right? So I think there was a protest a few days ago in one of these countries. I can't recall which one it was, just before the new year. And my friend in the UK was like, "Oh, deport these people back to where they're coming from." I was like, "Well, protest is not really. I don't think protesting should be a cause for deportation of people, right? If they're protesting, I think there are other ways to deal with protest, but just deporting them might not be the way to go, right?" But these are some of the real issues that Europe is facing and possibly America would face in the near future, right? People refusing to assimilate, people coming with their culture that might not align with Western values, um, you know, not being. I think there were even cases where when these people, these migrants commit certain crimes, the locals, the residents will not even name them because they're afraid of being called racist. That, oh, if you name it's a this person or that person that did it, they're afraid of being called racist. Hi Stanley, welcome to the conversation. How you doing? So those are some of the problems that I think I've seen, right? Now, the other part I want to talk about is, why do people actually emigrate? Why do people go to the West? Why do people go to America? Why do people go to Europe? Why do people leave their countries, right? At times when people on the right, they make this statement like, oh, they try to use the fact that people come from other countries to the West as evidence that there is no racism. They're like, oh, if there was racism here, why is everyone coming into why are people coming from Africa? Why are people coming from the Middle East? But they fail to understand that racism is not even, it's it's not a proof either way. It's not a proof that there is racism. It's not a proof that there isn't racism, because most people who are immigrating for different reasons, right? They're immigrating because they want economic opportunities. They're immigrating because they want security. They're immigrating because they want a better life for themselves and their children. And they're going to where they would find those opportunities, which happen to be Europe and America at this point in time. So they're not even going to be so concerned about quote unquote racism, because compared to where they're coming from, that's a minor issue, right? That's something that they can easily ignore. And I can tell you for a fact that many, Nigerians are emigrating to other parts of the world. A lot of Nigerians that have gone to the UK, but the sentiment, right? If you speak to Nigerians, the sentiment you will get, they would always tell you this: that there is no place like home. Like, no matter how well you're doing in another man's land, you're almost always a second class citizen. Yeah, like there is really no place like home, right? But um, there is a compelling reason why they would take all those things. They would take whatever issues, whatever quote unquote shit comes with immigrating to other places. They'll take it because they want they want a better life. So they just see it as minor inconvenience, right? Now, another thing that's usually said is, oh, especially for America, they say, oh, it's an invasion. You have why are these young men immigrating from their countries? Well, if these people are fleeing violence, if they're fleeing, if they're looking for a better life, why isn't it the case that the women are and the children are the ones coming in? Why is it able-bodied young men? Well, the truth is that's how immigration has always been throughout human existence. Most of the time, it's usually young, able, agile men who set out, to other places, right? The women are most likely going to be left back. So the men go over and then they they go and try to make a living, and then they try to send back to their families. So I don't that's not proof that, oh, it's an invasion of able-bodied men. They're coming to, create chaos and all that. Well, but there are issues that usually come with, a lot of young men who don't have anything to do in their hands, coming into a country. Yeah, those issues are going to be there. But it's not because they have a plan to take over. That's why young men are coming over. It's the fact that it's usually young men who take on such journeys, right? The immigration journeys, especially the illegal immigration journeys, they're usually treacherous. People travel, like in Africa, some people travel through the desert, trying to get to Spain, and from there to other parts of Europe. They try to cross the treacherous seas and all that. So that's not something for the faint-hearted. That's not something that many women would want to subject themselves to. So in essence, people leave their countries not because they think they're going to be accepted better in other countries in the West, not because of love for the West, right? It's not because of love for the West. It's because they want economic opportunities, they want a better life, and they think or they believe that that's where it is. That's where the economic opportunities are, and that's why they're going there, right? That's why they would go there. Now, the other part I wanted to talk about is what dangers this might portend for Western civilization or for the West, right? So when Mark asked that question, that what are the, he said, what will be the result of this increased migration to the West? And I just said, I said, I think it's going to be terrible, and I'll tell you why I think it's going to be terrible, right? I think it's going to be terrible because many of the people that will be coming over, they're not going to drop their. It's not because they think your system is better per se, not because they think your values are better per se, right? That's why they're coming over. It's purely economics most of the time. So definitely they're going to come with their values. They're going to come with their culture. They're going to come with, they're going to come with some other things, right? Yeah. They're going to come, Stanley says Nigeria tends to be Anglophone. In my opinion, it's the West. Well, yeah, in a way, in a way, but we can still make those distinctions. So they are going to come with all those things. That's why some people say, "Oh well, you fled an oppressive regime, say in the Middle East, and you're coming over here and you're trying to recreate those things in the West." People can't understand such kind of contradiction. There's actually no contradiction. There is no contradiction. Those people were not fleeing their culture. They were fleeing maybe conflict. They were fleeing a terrible economic situation. So when they come into a space where there is no conflict, where there's security, where the economy is good, where they can thrive, they're going to want to create their culture because that's what they're used to. They're going to want to create their culture in that environment, in such an environment. So it's not strange. However, we know that some of these cultures might not align with Western values. It can be a cause of friction. When you have people carrying out honor killings, when you have people doing some certain crazy things, right? It becomes a source of concern. And I think that with more migration from other parts of the world, third world countries, the Middle East, and all that into Europe, you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more of that. Is that ultimately good for Western society? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm tending to not really. I'm tending to not. But in the long run, this will be my final point, right? Before maybe I open up the stream. In the long run, this is, I would say, the West kind of had it coming, right? And I will explain what I meant by they have it coming. Like, it's like the chicken coming home to roost. It's like this is a result of decades, if not centuries, of policies, of European or Western policies um, that have coalesced into creating this situation, this condition where people have to flee their homes to come to Europe or come to America for a better life. Now, I'll just play a clip of Bill Maher and Glenn Greenwald talking about terrorism, talking about terrorism in extremism in the Middle East, right? And Bill's position was that, oh, these guys are just naturally extremists, and Glenn was like, no, you've got to take into consideration that there are some circumstances, there are some Western culpability in why these things exists. You can't just You can't just say it's because these people are terrible people, because these people are just extremists, they just love violence. Now there is a certain part of that, there is a certain part of violence in that kind of culture, but it's not because they just hate the West, they just hate America, they just hate freedom. That's why they're doing these things. There are other reasons why these things exist. So let me share that, and I'll take it from there. Share screen. Yes, good. All right.
It's not our fault what came out. We didn't go into Egypt.
Well, we
We
did.
wound up
When
with the Muslim
we didn't go
Brotherhood.
into Egypt. We were supporting and propping up Mubarak for 30 years, even as we were cheering for all the Tahrir Square demonstrators as though we were on their side. It was our government that kept Mubarak in power, just like we've done across the entire Muslim world. And it's amazing.
So now this point, I think what we're talking about was, in Egypt, right? Um, Meha's point was that, oh, we did not invade Egypt, but we still have terrorist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood, or extremists like the Muslim Brotherhood, and so many other things, right? And Glenn is like, yeah, we didn't do that, but we were supporting a dictator. The US was supporting the dictator Hosni Mubarak in Egypt for decades, right? So you can just see the contradictions between US foreign policy actions and US foreign policy speech opposition, right? The foreign policy speech opposition is that, oh, we want to spread democracy and freedom to all parts of the globe. And our actions are intended to bring democracy and freedom to those people. It's the same thing they said about Afghanistan, the same thing they said about Iraq, and so many other places. But the US has this consistent history of supporting dictatorial regimes. These guys are not democratic in any sense, but they are supported because they align with the political interest or the economic interests of America. So you can just see that contradiction when you're supporting people you're supporting leaders who are oppressing their people, and on the other hand, you're preaching democracy, you're preaching freedom, you're preaching equal rights. In many parts of the world, they have done this. In Africa, they've done this. In the Middle East, and many of these dictators, they like Saddam Hussein, right? The US also supported him until he became no longer useful to them. So it was now okay to dispose of him.
Amazing for you to say that, well, look at all these Muslims. The minute you give them a little bit of freedom, they go wild and they start being all violent. How can you be a citizen of the United States, the country that has generated more violence and militarism in the world over the last 5 or 6 decades, and say, look at those people over there, they are incredibly violent? We play a significant role in what has been happening in the Middle East because we've been interfering and dominating that region in order to have access to the oil.
I wasn't talking about violence.
So,
And he's correct, and he's actually essentially right. He's essentially right, right? When you see how the US has bases in almost every part of the Middle East, and you're asking yourself, why? And it's purely business, it's purely economics, it's purely, it's driven by capitalism, it's driven by, trying to gain economic control. There is really actually no reason. If you want to look at a place like Iran, before the Islamic Revolution of, I think, 1969, Iran was a very, very secularized part of the Middle East, right? It was a thriving, well, as close to a democracy as you can find in the Middle East. But somehow, US meddling and support for dictators and all those things, just put into motions events that led to the Islamic Revolution and what we currently have in Iran, that has taken Iran, decades into the past. So imagine if the US had not interfered in Iran, probably it would be a thriving democracy today. It would be a thriving democracy today. Imagine if the US had not invaded Iraq. You look at Iraq and you say, oh, ISIS came out of the mess that happened in Iraq and so many extremists. Before the US invaded Iraq, there was no terrorism in Iraq. It was US actions that actually caused those terrorists to, start springing up. When you go into, just like Israel is doing now, when you go into a village and you kill people, you're trying to root out quote unquote terrorists, and then you kill innocent people. You're just creating fertile ground for more extremists to. You're just creating a fertile ground for more extremists. That's it. And what happens when these people have got their homes destroyed? There are no economic opportunities for them in their homes. There is insecurity in their homes. What do you think will happen? They're going to emigrate, and where exactly do you think they're going to be emigrating to? They are going to go to the West, and they're going to come with their values. They're going to come with their culture, and you might not like them. But then you ask yourself, why are they living in the first place? People don't leave a place that is settled, that is economically prosperous. I don't think there are Saudis that are running from their country in droves. I don't think there are people from the UAE that are leaving their country in droves, because those places are, they're safe. Those places are prosperous. But where you have places like Iraq, where you have places like some places like Congo in Africa, where there are conflicts, right? Like, for example, the Congo, what these Western companies are doing with the mines in Congo, making sure that that region is continually destabilized, just so they can have cheap access to resources, right? Resources to fund Western industry. When you have all those things, then people are going to naturally gravitate to where they will find safety, where they will find economic prosperity. And guess what? They're going to go to the West.
Talking about theocracy. That doesn't happen here.
No, well, okay, that doesn't happen here, but at the same time, Iran isn't invading lots of other countries and occupying them for a decade, nor are fundamentalist Muslim countries the way the United States is. So these things are interlinked because we are continuously interfering in that part of the world. And so to say
Really, it's all our fault.
It's not all our fault, but when you send your military,
so you can see the trick that Meha is trying to play here. Glenn has given a series of reasons why this thing. He didn't say it's all the US's fault. Of course, it can be. It can't. The fault can't all be on the US, right? Like I said, there is a certain aspect to the culture in the Middle East that's tends to violence, right? So, but it doesn't mean that the US doesn't have a part, does not have a role, does not bear any responsibility in the rise of extremists. But Meha is trying to frame it as he's trying to make Glenn's position as unreasonable as possible by accusing him of saying, "Oh, it's all the West's fault." Of course, it can't be all the West's fault. It can't be all the US's fault. But there's a major culpability on the part of the US in creating those conditions that have allowed extremists to thrive.
6 straight decades into other countries to bomb them, kill their children and women and innocent men,
Well, we weren't
prop
doing
up
that.
dictators. Yeah, you take responsibility for your actions and say, to the extent that that region,
that religion goes back 1,000 years before our revolution. So I don't think we can take all the blame.
I don't think we should. I think we should
So
take a lot of
back to the all the blame thing again. No one is saying you should take all the blame. And yeah, if you go far back enough, you would even find that quote unquote the Christian religion, right, itself was violent as well. What's to say that the kind of reformation that the Christian religion has undergone, or at least the Roman Catholic Church has undergone, that it's no longer violent? What's to say that Islam wasn't going to go through that process before Western meddling, just messed things up, right? Many of these conflicts are political conflicts, but they would use religion as a way of galvanizing their people because that's what motivates them. In Afghanistan, they would use religion to motivate their people. That's what motivates them. That's how they can get people to buy into their political cause. So, at the root of this thing, is it really religion? Is it really religious fanaticism? Or it's purely political, but just being driven by a vehicle of religion? That's what I see in many of these cases.
out of it. And there's lots of bodies and corpses that have been piled up in the name of Christianity and Judaism as well.
Not recently.
Have you heard of the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza for the last 50 years, motivated in part by extremist views of Judaism or the wars in Europe or the fact that there were generals in the United States saying we have to go and invade and destroy Iraq, a country of 26 million people, because our God is bigger. Lots of religions, not just Islam, produce violence.
Well, if I could just make
So you- I think that will be enough for this, right? Now, it seems it seems I'm not making any considering the problem of Islamic terror in my country, it would seem as if I'm making excuse for them. No, I'm not. Right? I'm not making any excuse for them. I'm just stating that there are certain conditions that makes it easy for such things to develop. Right. So back to the point that I'm making, the final point that I'm making before I open up the stream. The point is when you create conditions that are unfavorable for people in their own countries, right? What they do is that they're going to leave their countries and they're going to come to yours. Now, the big problem that Europe has created for itself is that it has developed at a pace that's the disparity in development between Europe and other parts of the world, or within the West and other parts of the world, is so it's it's crazy because it's an unstable system. So if you want to solve this problem of migration, if you want to solve this problem of people coming into Europe and trying to change your culture, trying to change your values, then you've got to help other parts of the world come up to speed. You've got to help them develop as well. You've got to help them build their industries. You've got to stop supporting dictators. You've got to stop supporting corrupt leaders. You've got to stop accepting money from corrupt leaders in Africa that they stole away in the West. You've got to you have there is a lot that I think that the Western world can do to help the industries. You've got to stop suffocating those industries in developing parts of the world. You've got to stop unequal trade. You've got to stop so many things. That will solve the problem. See, there is a saying in my country that if you are the only rich man in the midst of poor people, then you are in danger, because if those people get hungry enough, they're going to turn on you, they're going to attack you, they're going to come for you, right? They're going to blame you for their problems, whether or not you are the cause of the problems, right? That's what's going to happen. So the way for you to have your peace, the way for you to have your peace of mind, the way for you to be able to, the way for Europe to be able to, and the West to be able to live in peace, is you've got to help other parts of the world develop as well. This policy of wanting to be at the top at the detriment of the global South, it's going to backfire, and it's backfiring. And there's essentially nothing Europe can do about it, because people are going to keep fleeing their homes that are unstable, where there are no economic opportunities. They're going to keep fleeing those places, and they're going to come to your country, and they're not going to always come with values that align with your values. It's going to be a source of friction. It's going to be a source of problems, right? It's going to be a source of tension, right? And in the end, the world might not be better for it. The world might not be better for it, right? So, Stanley, you can call in. Anyone that wants to have a conversation, you can call in. Let's just talk for maybe 30 minutes, and then we're done with the stream, right? So, essentially, to just summarize my points of the stream, right? Let's talk about immigration, specifically illegal immigration and immigration from third world countries in Africa and the Middle East, and what problems the Western world, especially Europe, is currently dealing with this sort of immigration. Why people choose to immigrate in the first place, right? Right? People choose to immigrate because they're looking for economic opportunities, they're looking for better conditions for their children. And when they go to these places, they're not going to automatically just align with whatever they're finding there. They're going to bring certain aspects of their culture as well. They're going to try to create the values that the places that they're coming from, right? So, and then lastly, my last point was that Europe and America or the West bears some culpability for this sort of migration, right? Because they have created the conditions where other people, other regions are not stable enough to for people to want to stay back. No, nobody actually wants to leave their home. That's just the truth. Nobody actually wants to leave their country to go to another country. It's because there's a compelling need, a compelling reason for them to leave. And if Europe wants to solve this problem, then they've got to help the other parts of the world to develop as quickly as possible. Hi Stanley, how you doing?
Hey Charles,
Hey, hey, happy New Year. This is the first time we're
Happy New
talking.
Year to you.
Yeah, how have you been?
Uh, Pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think, and it's of course I'm gonna make a weird point, but um, I don't think the West, as we see it now, because the West is kind of a nebulous concept.
Mm-hmm.
It could be way more. You know where I'm going to go with this.
Mm.
Um, Immigration in and of itself is not a bad thing. People should go
Mm-hmm.
where they feel most comfortable. Um, so that's that. I will say, in my opinion, the West, as in Europe, as in specific Anglophone countries, um, they're they have never taken responsibility for the problem that they caused. Um, we changed the laws to make black people equal. So it's all good. And that is just, to me, that's like their children.
Mm.
So I'll stop there because I know you know,
Yeah, so the point that you made about the West being a nebulous term is a point that Ogie has also raised multiple times. That when we say the West, what exactly do we mean, right? If like you said, Nigeria tends to be Anglophone, and it's sort of the West. Yeah, in a sense,
I
right?
I think so.
In a sense, right? But when I'm referring to West here, I'm mostly referring to
White people.
developed part of Europe
Mm.
and America and all that are much more economically prosperous, right? So while the Nigeria is a very westernized, country in Africa in terms of, values, in terms of influences and all that. Yeah, but it's not at the same level of development, right? So that's where I sort of make the distinction, right? So the point about people should be able to go wherever they feel comfortable. Yes, I think people should be able to go where they feel comfortable. It's a great thing. The It's just that the rate of immigration today would not be what it is if people are comfortable in their environments, if they feel secure, if they have economic prosperity in where they're currently living, right? They wouldn't have that need. It's often stated that Americans don't travel, Americans don't immigrate, and there's a reason for that. You have
Well,
everything
you
you
have
need.
to be very careful with that point. Rich
Okay.
Americans, those who can afford, it's a very particular problem. And
Mm,
there are exceptions, of course, but most Americans who haven't traveled,
mm.
it's because they don't have the money to do it,
Really?
I think.
It, yeah, okay, so when I'm talking about traveling here, I'm not just talking about traveling
State
to
to state, there are
sightsee.
a lot of
Yeah.
states out of the
So
country. Yeah,
I'm
travel,
I'm not
travel.
just talking about traveling to sightsee and come back, right? I'm talking about traveling to say I want to go to another country and start my life there. Like okay, like what maybe Fred is doing, right?
Oh, well, that's okay. Traveling, you mean like? expatriation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, just emigrating to another country, another part of the world, and
But let me ask, that is a
have a life
very
there.
interesting point. Um, and it's a topic not for this show, but the ones that I know of, um, if you are going to expatriate from America, um, the most famous ones I can think of were people like James Baldwin or Richard Wright. Um, some of it was forced, World War I, World War II, or people like the Kennedys. You do a season in Europe because it's part of you know um, people don't tend to expatriate from America.
Yeah, and
So
there's a reason.
you're
There is a reason for that. Do you want to say? Do you want to
well,
guess what the
what's the
reason for
reason?
that is? Well, because
And
they have
I'm teasing a
they,
bit.
yeah, so they have, it's a comfortable place, a prosperous place, is quote unquote the greatest country in the world according to Americans, right? So there is there is no compelling reason for them to want to go somewhere else where they might not have as good a life as they have in America, which is good. I think it's something admirable. I think it will be a great thing for other
Well,
countries to be able to create similar
well, let me
conditions for
ask
them.
you a question. Do poor people from Pakistan or most of the people who tend to come to America are either very rich or refugees because there's no middle class that comes to America.
So I may want to dispute that with you.
Okay.
When the very rich might not be, no, the very rich might, the proportion of the very rich who might come to America might be small. Most of them will be the elites, the ruling class, who don't come to America to stay. They come to America, and you
To
find something.
invest.
Yeah, you find something similar in Nigeria. Like the elites
Hmm.
here, they don't
Hmm.
actually leave. They can go and come. They can spend 2 weeks in the U.S. and then come back, spend 1 week here, but they actually never
Hmm.
leave. Right, and the children can be schooling over there, but when the
Hmm.
children are done with schooling, they come back to take over the political or the business empires that their parents have, right? So those who actually leave are those who are struggling, even mostly in the middle class. They try to just get as much resources as they can to move out, and if they're able to, if one person is able to go from a family, they try to bring other people from that family as well. So that's pretty much how it works, right? So it's not the elite or the rich living, it's those who are trying to get an economic foothold, trying to see, how can I make
Well,
things
see,
better
I
for myself and my
disagree with
family.
that. You don't come to America without an economic foothold. Getting here requires money,
Yeah, yeah, it
economics.
requires money, and people borrow money. If there's one thing that Nigerians borrow money for, they won't borrow money for
Mm.
almost any other thing. They won't borrow money to buy a car or build a house, but they would borrow money to make that trip and then work and repay it back. Yes. So it's not like they have that money sitting somewhere. Those who
Mm.
have the money sitting somewhere are not going to make that kind of journey. No, they don't have that money sitting anywhere. They're going to borrow from friends, they're going to borrow from family and make the contributions, make the journey, and then they start repaying back. That's how it works.
Well, I'm gonna make a weird argument. How many people, and I'm thinking of Nigerians, like Chimamanda, they didn't know they were black until they got to America.
Essentially, every Nigerian doesn't know who they are black until they get to America.
Every African, it's not that rare. So in a way, you make a good you can have an American dream, but that's kind of like a economic argument.
Yeah.
Um, America's way more complicated than just you can come here. and be, um, you know, live an American dream. And
Yeah,
I'm not going to go farther, but this is a thing that I just can't get folks to understand about America. America is complicated in good ways and bad ways.
mm-hmm.
And you know where I'm going to go with this. America is just ridiculously racist. If people from Africa, countries within Africa, don't they think you can come here and live an American dream? My point is there are going to be some complications. And my I grew up in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
a black middle class conclave or neighborhood or whatever you want to call it in a deep southern state. And um, so I understand. Fuck, I said the F word. I never really understood um, race till maybe I was 7, 8. And really after sixth grade. So what are sixth graders are like what? 8, 9 years old.
Mm.
Um, they closed my black Catholic school. So I went to mostly white Catholic school for seventh and eighth grade.
Mm.
And then I went to a very white exclusive school.
Mm.
Um, Honestly, if I ever heard the word in, hey, in,
Mm.
before I was 9, and I'm not sure I ever did, it was from seventh grade through 12th grade.
Mm.
So, um, my point is that America is complicated. You have to, if people like Christopher Rufo, for instance, are talking about identity politics, it's because it's been imposed.
Mm.
It was literally part of the way America was constructed from, I would argue, 1619. America has always been identity politics.
Mm.
In
Yeah.
class is second. So anyway, I'll stop because I'm going on a rant. But um, America is a land of opportunity, but there are a ton of caveats.
Yeah. So the thing is, most Nigerians will just see the opportunities part, right? And yes, they would understand that there are
Yes,
going to be challenges, right? But they think that
I
they are
wouldn't call
going
them challenges,
well, caveats
but I
as you.
will also tell you something that I've noticed. Nigerians, and I've given you compliments, Nigeria compliments, solid education. Mostly Nigerians have a weird ability to just go, F you.
Yep.
I am I am the way I am.
Yep. Yep. Because when you're coming from an environment like this, weirdly, Nigerians are very, very Nigerians are very, very American in the sense of um, you've got to make it, you've got to do it on your own, you've got to be individualistic, or
Hmm.
the government is not supposed to come in and help you do anything. The government is just supposed to fix the basic, maybe public infrastructure, then everyone there are many Nigerians that will tell you that government is not supposed to create jobs are supposed to be for the private sector. Every almost every right wing American talking point, capitalist talking point, is held by many
And
Nigerians.
um,
So they will look at those other things as like, these are minor inconveniences. I
well,
have a
see,
goal.
I tend to see it differently because the right wing of America, and again, it's a different argument. Um, I think that individualism, bootstrap, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Um, there are so many zigs and zags
Yep.
in America.
Yep.
And I think of
Yep.
Amadou Diallo. Um, there's a problem in America, and it's called race. You could be a rich dude who's Nigerian and be mistaken because of the color of your skin. And that's not class.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Again, I always go back to Ahmad Arbery. Dude wasn't, and this is a Georgia thing.
Mm.
You can be a rich black dude, latest sneakers, nice running clothes, and you can be mistaken. And I think
Yeah.
it's less likely um, if you have a different phenotype. And um, people in America um, cannot, black people know a lot more about America than white people in America. Um, um, Black people in America, we have a weird, like, our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, their great grandparents. I will never be disabused of the notion that Black people understand America better than Euro Americans understand America.
Well, I don't know about that. I
Well,
can't.
no, I do know.
Okay, so I just
And,
got to
and
take your
I
word.
wouldn't even stutter on that point.
I'll have to take your word for it then. Um, but the thing is, Nigerians are going to see those other things as, oh yeah, it's part of, I have a goal. That's why I'm here. So those other things, I won't let them like distract me. I won't let them get to me until I get what exactly I really want. Right. So it's not like they might not feel those things, but it's just that, well,
But you also know
if this
that
is the price that I
most
have to
people
pay.
aren't like you.
When you say like me, do you mean in me individually or me as Nigerian as representative of
No, I mean strong mind. You actually have a very like you can discern, you can figure out problems, etc. Um, and I didn't realize this, but dude, most people aren't like you.
Yeah, there are many ways in which I'm different from most people, and there are many ways in which most people are different from me. But I'm not I'm I'm not unique in Nigeria. You're going to find a lot more people like me, right?
Right.
There are a lot of people like me here. So yeah, so that's how it is. And now the thing with immigration too, especially with recent experiences, right? Many Nigerians are beginning to find out that it's not as rosy as you think. It's not as
In
the
America?
in America, in other parts of the world that they've gone to, in UK, in
Oh, they just
Canada.
found out?
Now they're not finding out on the other. They are finding out on the economic front, which is what they actually care about, right? So
Ooh,
I think
I
things
have
are
a
get
question after
yeah.
you're done.
Yeah, so I think things are getting tougher, and there have been reports of some people regretting actually making that moves. Of selling what little property they have and borrowing money and leaving to Europe or to Canada or to some other parts of the world, and then not getting exactly what they want. And some of them, because of the shame, they can't come back. They won't come back because they're like, okay, what's what's to show for my journey? So they're like they just
Oh,
stuck. They're just stuck over there. So yeah, such things does happen, but it's different for everybody. Some people go and they make it well, others not as much, but people take the risks. But I think it's getting worse. I think it's getting worse.
what's more important, economics or personal well-being?
Oh, for Nigerians, economics. Not no no. There is no doubt. There is no.
Okay.
That's not even a competition. It's not the economics. Personal well-being can come later, but let's get the back first.
Understood. I just tend to see it a different way, but I also,
Yeah, you tend to see the different way because you're American, so the economics is kind of like a given, right? So, um,
well,
what
I
then
mean,
after?
there are black people who want to get their bag.
Yeah, but what then after the like you're operating from a base that is not so bad, right?
Hmm.
So what then after that? Quality of life. That's what you want to, and that's
Well,
why
see, I
many.
don't, I, oh, Charles,
That's
I
why
tend to,
many Africans can't relate with some of African American grievances, right? It's not as if they just don't like African Americans. They are looking at it from their own condition and say, you know what? Do you know where I'm coming from? They know the challenges I have to face, and you are here. At least you have this basic, and you're complaining like, dude, something wrong with you. That's where they're coming from when they make the complaints of, oh, African Americans are not taking advantage of opportunities. So yeah,
well, I'm
it's
going to
just
take a weird turn here.
mm,
Um, African Americans, and my God, I do not want to sound like a soul brother.
mm,
Um, look at the stats. And not
starts
you
about what.
specifically. I'm kind
Mm,
of talking to African Americans, I guess.
mm,
Um, I'm not rich, but you can accomplish.
mhm. Yeah, and today I had a very funny interaction in one video on YouTube. Uh, some African Americans were just, I found it silly anyway, right? It's as if they were just, and it's a trend I've noticed of recent. Like, it's like they want a certain conflict with Africans, right?
Yeah.
The guy was essentially saying Africans sold African Americans into slavery, never came back for them, never helped them, never apologized, never, and Africans are benefiting from the so my I think Charleston White stated something that, we and Africans were not the same people, where the N word, right? We're not Africans, right? And he just made some distinctions, and I was like, well, you're right, well, we may share the same ancestry, but we're not exactly the same. But that doesn't mean we should hate each other. And that was when the other guy jumped in and was like, it's easy for me to say we shouldn't hate because our people were the ones who sold them into slavery, never came back for them, never helped them, never uttered an apology, never gave reparations. And I'm like, dude, you do you. If you want to hate all you can, all you want, but I'd rather you put that energy into something more productive rather than hate. So that's that's
You
a
know
part
what?
of it.
Um, history is not ideology. Um, what happened in the past, and I'm not fussing at you, but yeah, there's a lot of black people who sold people into slavery, but that's not ideology.
No, I didn't say it was ideology. I
No,
found
no,
it
no, no.
skewed.
I'm not fussing at you. I'm
Okay.
Charles, please. I'm not fussing at you. I'm just thinking about folks who, not you, think that way.
Mm,
What does what does African slavery really have to do with American slavery? I don't see the connection.
mhm,
Um, it Slavery is slavery, which is a Thomas Sowell point, but why there was slavery is really the devil in the details.
mhm,
Deus machina.
mhm,
Um, African slavery back in like 13 something or another, 15 something or another,
mm,
was different than slavery, say, in 1809 in America.
mm,
Same concept, but different reasons. And that is what scares me because people can't discern the difference.
mm,
Why is this um this it's the devil in the detail? Why
mm,
is really the salient question.
mm. Yeah. Well, I think that for me, I just think that there's a lot of bickering between groups that it just
That
misses
is
it just misses incredible opportunities for collaboration and opportunities for because I still think that class plays a bigger role than race, than ethnicity, than in in disparities in the challenges that people face
And
in life.
I think America is way more complicated when it comes to class issues. Not going to make a huge argument, but um, you sound like a leftist.
I've been moving left. I've been moving left these days. Weirdly, I've
But
started
you,
listening to more left leaning podcasts, and I found them to be actually pretty reasonable, right? They're pretty reasonable, right? Apart from the gender stuff and the
mhm.
at times the extreme race stuff. I and it's those on the right that's that's scaring me now, and I'm like, did I ever
Interesting.
look at these people as people who had any point, any that made any sort of sense? Like, wow. So, but anyway, I take issues. I take issues as they come, and I try to make sense of it instead of being on the right or on the left. No, if the right has the correct position, in my opinion, on the issue, then I'm there. If it's the left, then I'm there. So I'm not beholden to any
You
position.
know, the most interesting thing is individualism is pretty much independent thinking.
Hmm.
And the left and the right, and I think read the books, do the work, and you do. That's not my point. But this weird thing. Um, Sometimes you have to go back and reassess. And I think if you're happy, if you're reading books, if you have a lifestyle that's not necessarily capitalist, it's I you're gonna hate me. Um, moderation in all things. That's honestly
Yeah,
the best
yeah,
advice.
exactly,
It's like
exactly.
they're
That's
good
the point.
ideas on both sides,
Yeah,
and it just you said it, extremism. Why?
yeah. I think moderation just encapsulates it, right? If you
Yeah.
go too far to the left or you go too far to the right, it's a problem. It's a big problem. So, you know,
How about
just
just be you? Do what's best.
yeah,
And you are the best dude. you you have a family and all, parents and all that stuff. Do what's best.
yep,
If you have to be extreme, it's a tool. It's a mindset. It is a way to solve a problem, but
mm,
then go back
yep,
to the center and rethink.
yep.
Why don't people understand this?
I have
That,
no idea. I think people are so dug into this position of us versus them.
but
Like
why?
this is my side. So I've got to defend my side with everything I've got,
You don't
right?
have a side. You are smart. Your
Yeah,
side is smart.
exactly. That's the only side that should matter. The side of smart, the side of truth, the side of, you know, what's right. That's the only thing that
Best
should.
decisions, best way to do stuff, and you will make mistakes. And I don't
Yeah.
know, it is so weird. Um, do what's best.
Yeah. All right, Stanley. I think
Ah, no, I bored you.
no, I think this. I enjoyed the conversation. It's been fun talking with you, right?
Right.
But I think this would
Fun.
be a place to call this draw this conversation to a close.
Right.
So catch you guys in another live stream. It will be bye for now.
It
Thanks,
was
Stanley.
fun, Charles.